Hello, my name is Penny Ferguson, and I'm the founder and the CEO of The Living Leader. And so I'm going to talk today about leadership, and it's about how I titled it is leadership. Is it about you or is it about others? So before I actually get on to that, let me just tell you a little bit about me, how I got into leadership and how my passion for leadership grew to the point where for me it's now absolutely the foundation of life. So 27 years ago, I had been involved in leadership and management training with somebody who was incredibly good. No question, he was a great trainer, and people would leave programs saying, this is the best program I've ever been on. Absolutely amazing. And then I'd go and meet the clients maybe 2-3 months later. And what I couldn't get my head around was that they'd forgotten about 80% of it, sometimes even more, within 6 weeks. And I thought, I'm not comfortable about this. They're paying a lot of money to do this. They're paying a lot of money, and they're very passionate about wanting to be great. But if they go on this program and learn these skills, how come they're now forgetting to use them? And how come they're forgetting those behaviors once they're back in the workplace? And it didn't fit with my values. I was really uncomfortable about it. And then everything sort of fell apart for me anyway. And at the age of 50, I came out of my third very, very bad marriage. I had no money. All I had was some debts. I'd lost all the money I'd ever had. I was utterly disillusioned with all management leadership training. And worst of all, my second son, who'd gone schizophrenic at 18, had just died at the age of 26. So my life wasn't in a great place. And for the next year, I did all sorts of weird and wonderful things to sort of come out the other side. And the thing that I suppose began to impact me was I went on personal development workshops, things like Tony Robbins, Landmark Education, all of those great things. And I met a lot of business people on these. And I used to say, how do you use what you're learning here, which is very much about personal development? How do you use this back in the workplace? And 99% of them said they didn't. And I just couldn't get my head around it. I was thinking, you go and learn all this, but why is this not for work? Do you see yourselves as two different people, one for home and one for work? And that's when I began to think, I wonder if this is what is causing half of the problem, that so much training when you go back to the workplace doesn't stick, because you've got to think about it as, I've got to remember to pick up that toolkit of work skills. And sometimes, when life's busy or crazy things happen, you forget to pick up the toolkit. And I thought, I wonder if this is it. Is it possible I could bring these two halves together in a way that's acceptable in the workplace? So I thought, let's see what I can do. I've got to be honest, I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but I put together this program, which was going to be a 3-day program, 2 days, gap of about 3 weeks and a 1-day follow-up. And I put it together, and I managed to persuade 6 very brave people to come and pilot it. It was a very odd little group, and I was running it from my dining room at home, trying to keep 9 Jack Russells quiet in the kitchen at the same time, which was kind of interesting. And it ranged from a managing director through to a housewife going through a crisis. And I was so nervous, so nervous. And anyway, I ran this. And at the end of the first 2 days, somebody whose name I'll never forget, Annabelle Parahia, who was head of all development and training for Sun Microsystems in the UK, said to me, Penny, that 2 days has just changed my life. And I was, oh gosh, hadn't got the faintest idea why, not a clue. But I did suddenly find that I had a client called Sun Microsystems, and I was delivering this program. And it took me a year to work out why the program was having an impact. And that was when I began to realize that I hadn't understood leadership before. I hadn't. I really had not understood leadership. And over the next 27 years, that's been one heck of a journey for me. And now I would have to say that for me, leadership is the foundation of life, 100%. It's the foundation of every single part of my life. It's not just about, do I need it when I go to work and pick up that toolkit? No, I need it every minute of every day. And that's been a really interesting journey. So let me start off by just saying to you what for me would be a really good definition of leadership. And there's always going to be these definitions that go on being explained forever and a day. But let me just give you what mine is that works for me. The mark of outstanding leadership is not just how good a leader you are, it's how many leaders you develop. So what do I mean by that? Well, think about when you're a parent. Surely from the moment your child's born, one of the things that you're moving towards is absolutely helping your children make the highest quality decisions, step into their potential, be the best they can be without you, being able to stand on their own feet and become the special person that they really are. Think about the workplace. Doesn't matter how senior you are. Let's say that you're a very senior person and you're a brilliant leader, but you haven't developed leaders underneath you. But suddenly you're knocked over by a bus and you're in hospital for 6 months. If they haven't been developed, what are they going to do? They're going to be waiting there saying, oh, boss isn't here to tell us what to do. We're nervous to make decisions or do anything. You're going to end up with a problem. So for me, the mark of outstanding leadership is not just how good a leader you are, it's how many leaders you develop. And now let me give you another definition that works for me. Again, they'll always go on coming up with ones for this. I like things that are simple and that make sense and work for me. So let me share with you what for me is the difference between management and leadership. Outstanding managers drive people to perform the highest level they're capable of. And it's very much about control. Outstanding leaders inspire them to do it for themselves. And it's more about freedom. Let me say that one more time. Outstanding managers drive people to perform at the highest level they're capable of. And it's very much about control. Outstanding leaders inspire them to do it for themselves. And it's more about freedom. So why is it important to understand that? Well, let me give you the best example that I can, because for me, the most important leadership role that I have is no question. It's that of being a parent. That's my most important leadership role, being a parent. Now, I love my children. I really love my children, and I always wanted them to be the best they could be. And I've made so many mistakes in my life. I learned so much because I was always getting things, screwing up, getting things wrong. I didn't want my children to do the same. So I never stopped giving them advice. They'd come to me, Mum, what do I do here? I'd tell them. If I'd see about do something that I thought would cause a problem, I'd tell them. And I was always advising them, giving them suggestions, what they might choose to do. That's what I did. I was teaching them how not to think for themselves. What I was in effect saying is, you can't do this without me. I was telling them, you can't do this without me. As well as that, they could never be better than I was yesterday, because that's coming out of my own head, my own experience, my own advice. So that's now giving you the first insight into one of the behaviors that are pretty important for a leader, to learn to keep your mouth shut and not give advice. And that I found really difficult, I have to tell you. And this has been a really interesting journey for me, because I would quite often, for that 3-day program before COVID hit, we were running all over the world, a lot of these programs. And one of the things that we do very early on in the program, one of the first things is we get them to have a meeting. We have the group, it's normally never bigger than 10. And we'll get them to have a meeting. And what they don't know is that we're measuring their communicating behavior. And at the end of it, after we finish the meeting, I will then talk to them about communication, and I will take them through a model saying, here's the way that you can communicate. So every time you open your mouth, either you're telling somebody what you think, giving information, you're making a suggestion, you're disagreeing, you're asking a question, you're testing your understanding, whatever it happens to be. And we're measuring their communicating behavior to have a look at where they're communicating from. And if you think about it really simply, they're either communicating from the I. Let me tell you what I think. I've got a great suggestion. I don't agree with yours. Even worse, they could be just interrupting because they can't wait for the person to finish, or they're even being a bit, hey, that was a stupid idea and whatever. Okay. Or they're very much communicating from the area of, what do you think? Let me make sure I've understood you correctly. Hey, I love that idea you've just had, whatever it is. So it's very much about I or about you. And we give people the feedback. And nearly always I will have asked them when we start the program, if you had to describe yourself more as a leader or more as a manager, how would you describe yourself? And nearly always the very senior people would say, no, I'm very definitely a leader. We then ask them to say, okay, having looked at this communication model, where do you think the communicating behaviors would be? And they will say they'd need to be very much in what we describe as the green behaviors, showing interest in other people. And then I show them where they actually are, and they go into shock, absolute shock. Because the fascinating thing is that where they're communicating from nearly always is the I. They're so caring about people. And I do genuinely believe a lot of it is because of caring. We think that we influence people by telling them our opinions, our ideas, trying to persuade them to go our way. That's not the way we influence. It is not the way we influence. It's not the way the brain works. And it's a real wake-up call. And what's so interesting is they begin to recognize is that through nearly always, it's not always true, but nearly always caring for people, they're communicating in a style that is heavily, heavily management. That's what I was doing with my children. All the time I was bringing them up. All the time I was bringing them up. I was communicating as a manager. And the even more interesting thing for me is when we have the second meeting in the afternoon. This time they know that I'm doing it, so they're doing their best to be careful how they communicate. They realize how much they have to think to actually get out of communicating in the way they have been, which says it's not natural for them. So nearly always the thing that is absolutely key for leaders is being able to shift the way you communicate. It is absolutely fundamental. So that's one of the key things that I would say is critical. Now, if you think about it, come back to what I said, that what this is about is leadership. You know, is it about me or is it about others? If you think about it, it's both. So why is it both? It's both because of this. It's about others because you're wanting them to help them in any possible way think for themselves, to help them step into their potential, to help encourage their creative thinking, how they would grab this opportunity, how they would handle this difficult situation. You're wanting them to think for themselves. So your communication is all about how can I help them do that without giving them advice? So that's about others. But what's about me is about developing my skill. It's about focusing on what do I need to do as a leader. So it's both. And it's so interesting. The more you begin to recognize, people are apt to think that leadership is all about developing others. And they think in many ways to do that, they have to be giving them advice and telling them what to do. And it's the exact opposite. To be a great leader, you need to focus on developing you. And that's what makes the difference. And people who experience learning leadership in this way can see the most amazing changes happen in every part of their life, with their relationships with their family, with their partners, with their children. They see motivation increase in their teams because suddenly people are being really asked their opinion and encouraged to think for themselves, which helps them feel more worthwhile. So it's about both. So that's given you one insight into what leadership's about. Let me just very quickly, if you like, share with the other two, okay? One, I would say, is how you choose to think. And most of the time, we're inclined to focus on areas that we don't want. We do it ourselves. We're the worst at focusing on the things that we're doing badly rather than the things that we're doing well. And that's where we're inclined to put our attention. And when we're looking to help people, we're apt to look for what they're doing wrong to tell them and give them advice how to put it right. I'd suggest to you that there could be a more useful way of doing it, putting your attention on what they're doing well. And the more you put people's attention on what they're doing well, the more that improves. When somebody tells you very specifically an area that you've outperformed yourself, what do you want to do next time? Do it even better. How worried do you get when you put all your attention on what you're doing wrong? Don't ever hear me say that you ignore really bad things. What I'm suggesting is that if you really want to improve performance in any individual, if you can focus on their strengths, what a powerful way to do it. So, for example, this may not be the best example, but it just gives you an example. Let's say you've got a boss who's not very good at listening to you. They're not good listeners. They're always interrupting you. They're distracted. They're doing something else when you're trying to share important things with them. And it's not very helpful. Now you're in temptation to say, boss, you're not listening to me. How do we feel when we're criticized? Well, we want to defend. Yes, I am. And they come back and quote the last sentence at you. You could kick them. But that's what they're apt to do. That's not helpful. Supposing you look for an opportunity where by accident they listen to you. And it may be, I don't know, they've been out the night before, they've had a late night, they're not feeling great, they've got a headache. And so rather than doing other things and being distracted, they do listen to you. That's what you leap on. Boss, I just want to thank you. Do you know, you got better quality thinking from me just now because of the way you listened to me. I felt valued and it really helped me think well. I just want to say thank you. Now, how does boss feel? Oh, I enjoyed that. Oh, good. Oh, I need to do more of that next time. What you're doing is focusing on behaviors you want rather than putting your attention on behaviors you don't want. So it's quite a useful way to begin to have a real impact on all sorts of people. I tell you, it can have an amazing impact. So how you choose to think is key. There's one other thing that I think is key to leadership, and that is understanding responsibility at a very different level. Now, I could talk about this for a long time, and I don't have the time, and you will get very switched off if I talk too long. But think about it. Think about this. When we keep giving advice, what we're doing is depriving people of the responsibility to think for themselves. The real knack is, how do we get people to take ownership? And we may think about an organization. We need to bring in, I don't know, a new structure, something new way of doing things. And we've told them what they need to do. We don't know how they think and feel about it. And it's very easy to keep talking to them in a way that says, this is the way it's going to work. This is what's going to happen. And you're hoping that you can do it in a motivational way to inspire them. But you don't know they've owned it. You don't know if they've taken responsibility. And that's where, yet again, you need to get into communication. So if you knew that you could get this structure to really work well, how might you go about doing that? How might you involve your team so they take ownership and begin to enjoy this new structure and work within it effectively? So what else? That's really great. What else do you think you might be able to do to get them to buy into this? So what I've given you just a really, really quick insight into here is, if you think about it, leadership boils down, I think, to three, in many ways, very simple things, okay? And that is how you choose to think, understanding responsibility at a profoundly deeper level, and communication and the impact of your communication. And that's key. And that comes back to what I'm saying at the beginning, leadership. Is it about me? Or is it about others? And it's about both. It's about how can I help others step truly into their full potential? How can I do that? I can't do it by telling them. I can't do it by advising them. That's management. Can't do it that way. What I can do is really work on me, to develop me to become the best leader that I can be. And if I can do that, believe me, the impact that you can have on everybody whose life you touch is beyond anything that you can imagine. So I hope that's given you just a few insights and just a couple of things you can do. If you would like to know more, please join up with me on LinkedIn. I am there. So is our company, The Living Leader. So please do come and see what we do there. If you want to know more about our live program, which is not going to be happening for a while, or if you wish to know more about the virtual program, please do go onto our website, which is just thelivingleader.com. So please do go and have a look. If anybody wants to contact me, again, not difficult to remember, it's penny@thelivingleader.com. And I just want to thank you, Drew, for inviting me to do this today. It's been a pleasure, and I hope that you found something really useful from it.